and welcome to our TV show featuring documentaries revealing the realities behind myths using research and scholarship. I'm your host, Ergün Kırlıkovalı, and I will be with you every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're welcome to send me your feedback at mythsandrealities.com, #ethocide. The issue of Armenian demands for reparations has been around for a century. Demands range from monetary payments to return of estates to individuals and groups. Armenian demands for vast territories from the Ottoman Empire culminated in the never-ratified Treaty of Sèvres. Those hostile demands are incorporated, unfortunately, into the current constitution of the Republic of Armenia with the term Western Armenia, referring to Eastern Turkey. The Armenian Diaspora maintains that since the Ottoman government's temporary resettlement order, dated May 27, 1915, or Tereset for short, is genocide, and Turkey is successor state of the Ottoman Empire, the remedy of restitution has not been barred by passage of time. They seem to have pinned their hopes on the absurd interpretations of law by a Henry C. Thyrl, a Ph.D. in philosophy from the University of Massachusetts, who blindly misleads the Armenian Lobby with ludicrous comments like these. I quote, "Some of the Treaty of Sèvres elements retain the force of law, and the treaty itself is not superseded by the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne," unquote. I'm sharing this quote to show you how far removed the Armenian diaspora are from the reality. They're so delusional that they don't mind following the lead of a philosophy major interpreting international law. The Armenian lobby in America has aggressively promoted a dishonest and racist view of history while agitating for federal and state proclamations or resolutions distorting the events of 1915 as genocide. In that spirit, California Senate Bill SB 1915, introduced by two Armenian senators, Puchigian and Spire, passed in the year 2000. It enabled the Armenian descendants of the 1915 events to file claims against insurance companies a century later, seeking payments from policies in effect between 1875 and 1923. This self-serving law was struck down by a 2009 verdict of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit for being unconstitutional, as it usurped the federal government's foreign affairs power. The lawsuit, Bakalyan Davoyan versus Central Bank of Turkey, based on this law, was dismissed, and a 2012 verdict by the same court threw out another lawsuit, also related to the alleged genocide. The U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals dismissed in its 11-bank M-bank ruling of the lawsuit Movsesian versus Versigorum. The court ruled that only the federal government has jurisdiction over foreign entities, and that the U.S. government's foreign policy was based on non-recognition of genocide. When asked at a recent interview what the Armenians will do after President Biden's genocide recognition, Aram Hamparian, the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of America, responded, I quote, "That entire arena is now open to us. So there is the legal avenue, and I think that will be pursued very meaningfully," unquote. And in a long editorial titled "Entering the Reparations Phase, Who is Leading?" published at Armenian Weekly, the writer Stepan Pligian opined, I quote, "This is a political issue, not a historical one. The reparations phase will be a new and more complex encounter, an international reparations study group with participants from the Armenian government and diaspora should be created using the 2015 report led by Dr. Theriault as a guide, unquote. There are many more editorials, letters, and comments that all point to the direction of filing more lawsuits against Turkey. And that's not all. 3 California state legislative bills have been introduced by the Armenian Lobby since February 2021, ACR 26, AB 1019, and AR 21. All are related to the allegations of Armenian genocide and the Armenian territorial claims against Turkey. ACR 26, introduced by the Armenian Assembly member Nazarian on February 8, 2021, will praise California businesses that have chosen to suspend business dealings with the Republic of Turkey. AR-21, introduced on the same day by the same Armenian Assemblyman, Nazarian, is about the alleged Armenian genocide. AB 1019, introduced by Assemblymember Holden on February 18, 2021, will prohibit public employee retirement systems from investing in the lucrative Turkey papers until Turkey recognizes the alleged Armenian genocide. The Armenian attempts to drag California legislature, public education, economy, and criminal justice institutions into the anti-Turkish witch hunt constitute an abuse of representative democracy. 1 or 2 Armenians introduce a piece of sick legislation and others raise their hands automatically out of ignorance, indifference, religious prejudice, or need to curry favor, or a combination of these. 1 or 2 Armenians poison the entire legislative body with their hate speech based on their ethno-religious bias and discrimination. 1 or 2 Armenian politicians are allowed to undermine the U.S. relations with a very important longtime ally, a strategic partner, and a staunch supporter of the U.S. in the troubled Middle East, Turkey. Turkey, a 70-year-long NATO ally and the bulwark of Western defense alliance against Russia, is slandered. Armenia, with 2 major Russian bases on its tiny landmass, per ominous Armenia-Russia Defense Pact, is favored over Turkey. Armenia, a landlocked, poverty-stricken, corrupt and violent state, is little more than a distant province owned and operated by Moscow. 1 or 2 Armenian politicians dictate policy to the most powerful country on earth, the US. And we call this democracy. There is something wrong here. Armenian interests trump American interests, and we call this democracy. Something is wrong, terribly wrong. The only solution here seems to be education. We must educate the US public on Turkish-Armenian history and Turkey's pivotal role in the world peace, because the US public elects those politicians. Now that President Biden uttered the G word, the Armenian diaspora will probably turn up its hate speech and malicious propaganda, defaming and demonizing all Turkic Americans. Increase in harassment cases and Armenian violence towards Turks and Azerbaijanis are to be expected. The Armenian diaspora will probably reintroduce their previously rejected lawsuits against Turkey. More anti-Turkish resolutions may be introduced at city, state, and federal legislatures, trying to hurt Turkish economy and Turkish people by meddling with the US-Turkey relations. The Armenian lobby has been involved in boycott, divestment, and sanctions targeting Turkey. Such BDS activity is expected to surge. Armenians will certainly try, but as always, they will not gain much because they lack the 2 most important sports: history scholarship and international law. the Armenians display a poor understanding of the consequences of the international treaties signed between Turks and Armenians. The Treaty of Alexandropol, or Gümrük Anlaşması in Turkish, signed on December 3, 1920, Armenia and Turkey took back the former Ottoman land ceded to Armenia in the Sèvres Treaty. The treaty stipulated that 1. Armenia cede to Turkey its entire province of Kars, 2. Accept a new border between the two countries, and 3. Renounce the Treaty of Sèvres. Soviet Russia signed with Turkey the Treaty of Moscow on 16th of March 1921, ratifying the Treaty of Alexandropol. And finally, the Treaty of Kars was signed on 13th of October 1921 by Turkey and the 3 Soviet republics of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. As you can see, these international agreements validate each other, and their legitimacy are based on international law. The Armenian diaspora will hit this wall of law next. Ignoring or denying such a formidable array of international laws will get Armenians nowhere. Many Armenians still dream of restoration of the Turkish-Armenian border as drawn by the former US President Woodrow Wilson in 1920, Treaty of Sèvres. Some also demand a land corridor between Armenia and the Black Sea, while others the inclusion of Mount Ararat, or Agro in Turkish, in Armenia. Armenians today still argue that they have a legitimate claim to receive reparation from Turkey, and that the Armenian entitlement for reparation has not lapsed. What they do not know is that the claims of the naturalized Armenian citizens of Ottoman Armenian origin are rendered baseless by the 1934-1935 Turkish-American Agreement. Having studied the details of the talks and evaluate the contents of all the files submitted to the State Department for compensation, Dr. Kemal Cicek ascertained that Turkey agreed to pay in 13 installments a total of $1.3 million for compensation. This figure alone shows that Armenian claims were found by the State Department to be grossly exaggerated. The fact that the State Department asked the Turkish government not to continue the payment to the US after the 9th installment demonstrates that eligible Armenian claimants were indeed quite a few. This agreement is in full force and effect today, and the Armenian diaspora will hit this legal wall sooner or later. To understand how politicized Turkish-Armenian history is, let's take a look at the resolutions fielded at the US Congress in the past century. From 1916 to 1996, there were only 6 resolutions in 80 years. They all referred to massacres and past. Average, roughly 1 resolution for every 13 years. But from 1919 to 2017, the Armenian Lobby entered the scene. Both the frequency and the harshness of the language of the resolutions increased. There were a whopping 15 resolutions in 27 years. They all referred to genocide and all were rejected. Average, roughly 1 resolution for every year and a half. 2019, the Armenian Lobby introduced 2 in 2019. Both referred to genocide and both passed. So why the sudden change in attitude? What happened? Did the US Congress come upon a heretofore unknown massive evidence that changed their judgment in a hurry? Of course not. If there were such evidence, rest assured that the Armenians would go to the nearest court, incompetent or competent, doesn't matter, to get some sort of dubious judgment. That's Armenians for you. And this court could not be ICJ, as events before 1951 cannot be tried there. So I ask again, what happened that caused the US to change its mind and judge Turkey guilty? Well, what happened is politics. Yes, politics happened. Turkey wanted to buy Patriot missile defense system, but the Obama administration did not allow that sale. Turkey went to the open market. First, a European system was tried, but not found to be very effective. Then a Chinese system was chosen. Whole hell broke loose in Washington, D.C. How can an ally buy a weapon system from our major enemy? Well, then how can an ally like the US refuse to sell Patriots to an ally like Turkey? Finally, Turks decided on the Russian S-400s. Again, the whole hell broke loose. But by this time, the trend was clear. The US did not care about Turkey's defense needs at all. The US wanted Turkey to be a puppet at the beck and call of Washington, D.C. Russia does not only sell S-400s, but also agrees to co-manufacture the next generation of S-500s with Turkey. A huge team of Turkish engineers and scientists are being trained there in Moscow right now. Pretty soon, Turkey will develop its own technology, so bye-bye embargoes and sanctions of the US Congress. That was political change number one. Number two was the 2016 coup in Turkey, engineered by Fethullah Gülen, an elementary school-educated cleric, calling Pennsylvania home for the last quarter of a century. Gülen is wanted in Turkey for causing the deaths of more than 250 innocent civilians. There's an extradition agreement between the US and Turkey, based on which Turkey requested Gülen's extradition. Normally, this would not be a problem at all. But the US says it is not convinced that FG is behind the coup. Turkey had sent many reams of documents connecting FG to the coup, but the US remains unconvinced. The real reason for not extraditing FG might be FG's alleged ties to CIA. It is contended that if the US turns FG over to Turkey, then the role that the US played in that coup may be exposed. Others reject this claim as a baseless conspiracy theory. Another political change is the Kurds. When Daesh gained global prominence in 2014, effortlessly driving the Kurdish militia, some tied to PKK and the notorious Marxist-Leninist terrorist organization, because the Kurds would just flee the battlefields without showing any resistance. Remember how key cities like Mosul and Sinjar fell like dominoes, one after the other, very quickly? When asked why the Kurds are not able to fight back, a Kurdish militiaman gave an answer that would put a stand-up comic to shame. He said, I quote, "We are used to fighting in the mountainous terrains where we run and can hide. Desert terrain is too flat, too open for us to do that. We cannot fight out in an open space like that," unquote. I was so amused that I remember writing a letter to the editor. If the Kurds do feel comfortable enough to fight in mountain terrain, but not desert terrain, then maybe we can arrange to dispatch a few Disneyland Imagineers to build fake mountains like those in Matterhorn ride, complete with bobsleds. Maybe then they will fight with the Daesh. I was, of course, joking, poking harmless fun at the Kurdish terrorists. I cannot believe that these same cowardly so-called fighters, for lack of a better word, are now heroes at the State Department and the Pentagon today. What a shame. Is it because those Kurdish terrorists are doing the dirty work for the US? Or are the 30,000 semis full of finest American weapons, billions of dollars in value, donated irresponsibly over the past 5-6 years to the extensions of PKK terrorist organization in northern Syria, like YPG and SDF, doing the job for them? Why would the US knowingly arm a terrorist organization at taxpayers' expense, despite angry and persistent protests by a longtime ally and fellow NATO member like Turkey? Doesn't the US know that those weapons will eventually be directed at Turkish soldiers? Would allies do this kind of heinous acts to other allies as US did to Turkey? Then there is the Eastern Mediterranean matter. Turkey has the longest shores of any country surrounding the Mediterranean. And yet, countries with no shores in East Mediterranean like France and Italy are included in sharing the offshore natural gas resources in Eastern Mediterranean, along with former Ottoman Empire communities like Greece, Greek administration of southern Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt, while Turkey is left out in the cold. Turkey would not or could not allow such heinous and evil plans to hatch in her own backyard. So Turkey, in a brilliant diplomatic move that surprised everyone, signed a marine delineation agreement between Turkey and Libya and filed it with the United Nations. It is accepted by the United Nations, and the law of the seas now is that delineation. Any pipeline passing through that area needs to secure the permission of Turkey or Libya. The US, in an ill-informed and ill-advised manner, threw its weight on the side of the gang of opportunists, not the righteous one, Turkey. Now that Russia is building up its forces near eastern Ukraine and the US wants to bring its naval power to the Black Sea, the US finally remembered the geostrategic power of Turkey and significance of the Montreux Treaty of 1936. Now what? Does the US plan to get the help the US needs from those cowardly Kurdish terrorists? Or will the US ask Gulen to please convince Turkey? Or perhaps Italy or France or Greece might be asked to persuade Turkey? These issues so irritated the US politicians that they decided to punish Turkey with 2 resolutions in 2019. The US recognized the Armenians' long discredited political claims as genocide. And they deliberately did it on a very special day for Turks, 29th of October, the Turkish Independence Day. You can rest assured that the Turks will never forget this backstabbing, heinously orchestrated against a longtime ally. Shame on you, politicians. For 104 years, the US Congress resisted the characterization of 1915 events as genocide, and then passed it almost unanimously in 2019 when the US did not get what it politically wanted from Turkey. Will the Armenian lobby, finally realizing the hard facts on the ground, drop their unrealistic demands? Or at least scale them down, maybe? Or will they totally irrationally raise their expectations to heretofore unheard ridiculous levels? What impact will the diaspora behavior have on the regional peace efforts in the Caucasus? Those are all great questions. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.